So, after the last Total War Saga game sucked ass, Creative Assembly announced Total War Troy. Hell yeah, Age of Mythology Total War? Imagine how fun it would be.
TRUT behind the myth, Epic Game Store exclusive, fucking get it for free, who gives a shit?
Not very promising, right? Well, I think it's fair to say that, thanks to expectations being so low, the fact that the game turned out to be mediocre was a pleasant surprise. Well, it's a free game, so it's not bad, but is it worth the Chinese spyware? Let me get this straight, not only I do not like the Epic Game Store, I also distrust all Chinese.
That was joke. Epic Game Store great. Glory to China. Play Fortnite and Troy. Begin review, now.
Set in the Iliad, the Total War Troy let you take control of epic heroes and having them fight for the titular city. Kinda. In case you have never played a Total War game, let me explain the mechanics. You start in the campaign map with one hero that has some troops. When fighting another army you can auto-resolve, often taking needless losses, or fight the battle yourself. This loads a battle map where you get to fight in a more traditional sense. You might think that there's a lot of strategy involved in these battles, but like most Total Wars, there's one tactic that reigns supreme: Hammer and Anvil, or fancy flanking. On the campaign map you can recruit more units, expand your cities, which will give you various bonuses and also the ability to recruit better units, and also recruit agents. There's three normal ones. Priestesses are mostly for utilities with the God's Favor system, which we'll touch on later. They also have the ability to look for omens before a battle, which gives you barely noticeable buffs or debuffs. Then there's spies, who win battles before they commence and maybe assassinate enemies. Lastly, envoys have one real use: embed them in armies and lower the upkeep, thus allowing you to field more armies. There's one core difference from all other Total Wars: money is gone. Instead, there's a barter-based resource system. Food and bronze are used to recruit units and pay their upkeep. Why some units have to be paid in bronze, got no idea. More specialized units might require wood or gold to recruit, but never for the upkeep. Instead, wood, stone and gold are mostly used for buildings. This system isn't bad. In theory, it forces you to be mindful of where you expand, as your conquest should be driven by necessities rather than just territorial expansion. In practice, however, it just forces you to barter for food and bronze to keep your armies going, occasionally getting more wood or stone to go on a building spree. Not like you can choose your wars anyway. For once, it's nice to see diplomacy being important in Total War, but the AI overvalues a lot of treaties, so it isn't hard to get what you need, and you won't ever need to sacrifice anything important for it. And that's when you ask. Once you start getting some gold, you'll be swamped by peddlers and beggars. Ending the turn goes from a horror movie to a European vacation experience. AI factions show you their preferred resources from the diplomacy panel. You should be able to set your own so that they stop asking for all your gold in exchange for a tenth of the wood you make in a turn. Well, at least in this game there isn't the usual player hate fest you see in other Total Wars. That's because Trojans and Danans have events to make them buddies with each other. I guess it's a slightly better system than the undivided in Fall of the Samurai. Although in one campaign Ithaca confederated the other Greeks and they refused to join the war against Troy itself. You'll still get swarmed if your unreliability rating goes up, minuscule faction will still declare suicidal wars on you, and most factions will still bypass your enemies to screw you over, so Total War players will feel right at home. One new thing is ultimatums. Occasionally some faction will ask you nonsensical and unimportant things, and if you refuse they'll declare war on you. Like for example, they might ask you to end a military access treaty with someone they have a non-aggression pact with. So I accepted and asked Hector for another treaty next turn. Or this minor faction here demanding that I give them access for no reason in particular. Let's see how it works out for them. I wonder why if someone ultimatums you, you're unable to call your allies for help. At least region trading is a thing in this game, but it would be less of a problem if provinces weren't so arbitrary. If you get a lone minor settlement, since there's no public order building for most factions, then you might not be able to keep it, while a lone major settlement doesn't produce anything on its own, so it might be a waste of resources. Let's talk buildings for a second. First thing is that the AI can't build properly to save their lives. This is a region confederated, and they thought it would be a good idea to place a wood boosting building in a region that gives no wood. This might be the reason why they spam stacks of worthless units and why they'd rather send 3 armies of 5 units each instead of a big one, since they might have problems optimizing food production. However, it isn't an excuse for them to keep recruiting armies on the front lines where they both don't have the proper buildings and are in more danger. Most of the campaign is spent auto-resolving fights with these worthless armies. Sometimes they just suicide? But even then, is it really the AI's fault? Well, yes, but first of all, unit placement around buildings is somewhat inexplicable. Look at this, 3 different Axmeni in 3 different building chains. Why do temples and watchtowers give you units? Some factions can't recruit anything from the boyar, but they can still build it? Why? Couple this with the lack of global recruitment and you have a terrible system. Wars are lightning fast if you know what you're doing, so you'll be expanding a lot. Especially if you're barely keeping up with the upkeep, you're gonna need plunder. As you leave the early game, the everyone declares war on you part of the campaign begins, and you might not reasonably have time to disband an army and raise it again from the home province. Which, considering you'll seldom be capturing recruitment buildings and you need one garrison army to fight the Trojan invasions, kind of forces you in this never-ending advance of fighting shit armies with your own okay army, where you don't want to lose units and thus are forced to fight easy battles because of the terrible auto-resolve system. This snowballs into an horrendously boring late game where the turns look like this.
On target every time. Make me proud. Break some backs. Look everywhere for loot. Ready. Death or glory. Pillage and plunder.
And this goes on for a long time. If you're lucky enough to have the victory condition factions be confederated, you might be able to end it early, especially with the Trojans. But if you aren't, it will take forever to exterminate them, being further slowed down by most neutral factions declaring war on you because of the great power diplomatic penalty. To mediate this, I recommend playing as Menelaus first. He has a mechanic that allows him to recruit units from any allied faction globally for extra cost and time, but since everything normally recruits in one turn, you'll only have to wait 2. Fact is, Menelaus has a quickly build tier 1 unique building placeable in any settlement that halves the recruitment time, so you can conquer a town, add that building, conquer the next in the same region and be recruiting the best units from other factions in the same turn. Pretty powerful if you ask me, unlike most other factions' unique traits. Achilles has mood swings, which means that occasionally you'll get severe bonuses and maluses, yay, but also get a dual mechanic where you can click a button and get free units. Very fun to face in the late game. Hector has a system where he's competing with his brother for Priam's favor, so he gets quests that might nudge you in directions you don't want to go. He also has an alliance meter where he gets increasing bonuses from the size of allied territories. Enea has the ability to talk to the dead for some decent bonuses. It's pretty cool that you need to unlock most of them first, essentially giving you secondary objectives in the campaign, but most bonuses aren't worth the hassle. You can also talk to Homeric heroes after their faction gets wiped, but they tend to confederate rather than die, so it's a bit of a wasted potential. But get this, he also has the ability to look for omens that might give him great challenges, such as in 8 turns max, sell the entire map and go beat this guy before someone else does for a minor amount of favor. No. Well, there's no malus for failing them, so I guess it's still a plus. Oh, and the second Spartan ability is to settle ruins anywhere on the map, because you really want to acquire a defenseless territory right next to 5 different Trojan factions that are all at war with you. What a bargain! Ulysses gets better buildings in coastal settlements and basically nothing from landlocked ones, which is great when landlocked factions declare war on you. You can also create hideouts in enemy territory that you'll be conquering in in 3 turns max anyway. Paris has the ability to move Helen around with increasing bonuses for them being together, as well as sharing Priam's air system. Serpedon can use hidden resources to get some minor faction-wide boosts. Lastly, Agamemnon can, instead of just expanding, vassalize his neighbors and then have to deal with their AI being a cunt. Wonderful. There's more factions coming. The Amazons are in development right now and currently unplayable. It's a pretty good idea to have this system, as having only a change of units would ruin the replayability of the game, but I feel like they could have been thought out more. A lot of them are plain uninteresting and some are definitely more useful than others. Speaking of, each faction has its own unique quests designed with no flexibility and often with horrible requirements. Like Enea has one that makes you go all the way to fucking Ithaca for no reason. Oh yeah, accept my destiny. Do I just alt F4 and end the campaign here then? You know, I was afraid that you could just sail to Troy and capture it right away, but even worse than that, I was playing as Menelaus and being navally invaded by none other than MC Steal Your Girl himself. Because when Hector said seek shelter, he meant go get them, Tiger. So after he captured some undefended territory, I started fighting him. Turns out that in a CAC vs Simp war, the CAC wins. So I recaptured this undefended, forward as fuck, worthless territory and found fucking Helen inside. That's it, boys, the wars are over, we can go home now, we won. But no, we're not done. The quest chain asked me to visit my father-in-law, ruler of Knossos, which I already captured. Then I had to choice between bending the knee to my brother or reminding everyone that I ruled this coalition. Good thing his faction got confederated, otherwise that relation malus might have hurt. Then it asked me to send an envoy to the city of Troy. I only get 3 envoys and they're necessary to lower the upkeep of my armies, so why should I detach one and send him to Troy? Well, to ask Priam to give me Helen back, despite the fact that she's in Sparta right now. No matter, I send the envoy anyway and oh no, Priam refuses. Now I have no choice but to capture it back myself. Should we kill her then, the game asks. This might have been a more appropriate choice to have when I captured her. Well, it's between around 12 gold or thousands of food saved each turn. Sorry Helen, you might be beautiful, but you aren't as precious as grain. One thing left to win the campaign, and that's to siege Troy. So I did. I managed to convince Ulysses to finally join the war, but he also decided to fuck off rather than help me with the city. A lot of people died in this siege, but even more than people, frames died because my PC is shit. By the way, the Trojan horse is just a siege tower, how compelling. I wonder why you need that when real horses destroy gates in seconds though.
The enemy gates have been destroyed.
Yeah, I gotta start talking about battles. The one word that used to describe combat in this game is floaty. Units run at the speed of light and most early game units will run away when they probably shouldn't. The matchups are also incredibly unintuitive. There's axes, swords, clubs, spears, 200 variants, slings, javelins and archers. Is a club better than an axe or a sword against an armored target? Are tier 1 elite units better than tier 3 normal units? Why are some units unflankable? It takes a while before you start understanding who wins against what. The gist of it is way simpler. There's frontline units, flanking units, mid shields, ranged and chariots. Frontline holds while the rest flanks. You might group together javelins to destroy a wing, and mid shields can be relegated to chasing enemy missile troops or to tiring out dangerous enemies, but that's it. Worst part however is that because of the scarcity of cavalry and chariots and most of the fights taking place in choke pointy settlements, ranged weapons are king of the battlefields. In particular, stacking javelins throwers means you can melt one unit after another in seconds. Trying to catch them with anything but dedicated flankers is also a lost cause. But the AI can't properly micro-ranged units, so it will spend the whole battle running away from militia even though they could beat the chasing unit in melee or with a little bit of micro. Sieges too aren't amazing. First of all, the walls are too thin and it makes it harder to have proper fights. For most of the campaign, your only siege weapon is rams, and exactly like in Warhammer, your units will stand behind the very slow ram and be decimated by missile fire. Who's pushing it? So, exactly like in Warhammer, it's better to just have your units destroy the gate with spears. Or maybe with kicks like Achilles. Just watch out for enemy javelins going through the gate. Heroes are awfully implemented. They've got weaknesses in the early game, sure, but later on they become pretty much unbeatable by themselves while killing units very slowly and having a lot of worthless abilities. Herculean throw! Feel the might of Hercules!
Eat my rock!
The abilities either do pitiful damage, heal a mediocre amount of HPs, or are just plain bugged. Other than that, hero versus hero is always won by the most leveled one. Ranged heroes especially will just murder low level ones before they can even engage. Although for some reason the AI has trouble keeping up with hero levels. By the way, I wish the game would let you look at skill trees before you recruit heroes. Although maybe skill tree is not the correct term. This here is a terrible system that makes every hero feel the same. Why fix what was never broken? The one improvement over any other Total War is the rematch button, perfect for all you save scammers. Now, if you don't play Total War, you might think it's better to roll with the punches rather than only accept victories, and I'd agree, you don't need to win everything past the early game. But when fucking Hector, alone, sieges a recovering settlement and barely wins, I'm not gonna take that sitting down, I'm just not. Yeah, this Total War is too historical for mythical creatures. Oh yeah, about that. One thing that would have made this title amazing was the addition of mythical units, but instead we get the conjectural historian version of them. For example, do you know that some people speculate that the myth of the Cyclops came from people discovering elephant skulls and mistaking the hole in the middle for an eye socket? Does this myth keep in mind that elephants were widely known in the ancient world and that humans hunted mammoths since the dawn of man? No, it doesn't, it's a conjecture based on nothing. So the game version of a Cyclops is a guy with an elephant skull on his head. What? Okay, at least maybe you can see through that. How does the monitor see through this? How does the monitor roar and make the entire front line break? Why did the people in Knossos take this guy with a bull skull on his head and trap him in a labyrinth? Giants are, of course, just tall, hairy people. I wonder what's so extraordinary about them, considering that they're everywhere and also aren't much taller than your average hero. Sirens are just slingers with inexplicable abilities to taunt people. Then there's harpies, which you recruit from a level 1 building and basically are the best javelin throwers in the game, especially when going by cost. Yeah, flying demon ladies, they were probably javelin throwing brigands, yeah sure, why not? Their projectiles also drop the enemy morale. Why their javelins are special enough to do that, I've got no idea. There's also the question of, if Minotaurs and Cyclops are just people, why do you need a high favor of the gods to recruit them? I was gonna ask why the gods are even real if you're going for something more grounded, but then I remembered that they did exist until Jesus gunned them all down. Also given by the favor are epic agents. They are more reliable but single-use agents that are pretty powerful but can't level up or embed in armies. They're completely outclassed by normal leveled agents, especially spies. Let me open a little parenthesis about the gods' favor. You accumulate favor by building temples and performing hecatombs, which raise in price every time. I'm guessing bull inflation was a thing back then. Anyway, fact is that if you capture a temple, you're basically stuck with a worthless building. The gods' favor keeps falling every turn, so you need to keep dedicating stuff to them. But if you capture a level 3 temple, then it's only there to prevent you from erecting another one. You can raise already dedicated, but that will lose you favor points or gold. Anyway, returning to the mythical creatures, there's one more, the centaurs. They're just naked people on horses.
Where does the horse end and the man begin?
How fucking clever. So if it's a man on a horse, it's a centaur, but if it's a woman on a horse, it's a horsewoman. Oh, by the way, truth behind the myth, right? But Amazons aren't just men with tits. They're a serious representation of what the Homeric Amazons would be like. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not a misogynist.
A lonely bed and a shaky claim to power. You haven't done well.
Or at least I wasn't? I'm not so sure anymore. I hate Amazons, I hate them so much.
You're about to know the power of warrior women.
Fuck your nails, woman. Vagina kick! You see, at some point in the campaign you'll be assigned a rival. I was unlucky enough that I got Amazoned. What do rivals do? Well, they relentlessly attack you like everyone else, but maybe they get some bonuses, I'm not sure. Maybe they just spawn armies to sack your defenseless cities, I don't know. Still, Amazons have the most annoying roster to face.
Break already! God damn it, woman, break!
Their swordswomen after fought to the last men. Their armies always had a fuck ton of great archers and their heroes. Their heroes.
One of your units has no more ammunition.
Now I wanna touch on the bugs I found. First of all, I confederated Troilos, who is supposed to be a numeric hero, meaning immortal, but then he just died. There were a couple of very minor visual bugs and the game crashed once. This one time Menelaus got wounded by a spy, so I had to replace him with Menelaus. Not exactly a bug, there's no minimum wounded time for heroes, so he became basically immortal. Lastly, Enea needed to reach rank 25 to talk to Hercules, but since he somehow got enough experience to skip level 25, he never got the option. This one isn't a bug either, and you probably know it by now, but you can use long barters to get pretty much anything, then end those barters and only have a slight diplomatic penalty with that faction. If you do it with a long-term ally, then there's virtually no consequences, and you can do it to force peace, join wars, and even a non-aggression pact. But wait, there's more! On my Enea campaign I was wondering why the fuck Hippolyta wasn't joining the war effort. So I wanted to sway her opinion and made an interesting discovery. Do you know why gifts have set sizes in other Total Wars?
That
Yeah. Using this method you can get any faction to like you, use their barter cheese too, and you've got the ability to make friends with anyone. This gives me an idea.
Menelaus, right. Let's get this over with, shall we?
I am gladdened of the Achaeans see reason.
You speak as I think. Some wine and figs first. Then we shall talk.
the outcome I hoped.
Time well spent.
Troy forever!
But enough memes, let's wrap this up. The bottom line is, worth buying? No. Worth playing if you got it for free? Depends. I can't stress enough how badly paced the campaign is. Look at these stats. 100 auto-resolves and 50 battles. The only battles I've ever lost were minor settlement defenses. Half of it is because the AI can't make proper armies and let you steamroll everything, the other half is because the auto-resolve values are busted and it's easy to win what the game considers equal fights. The battle AI is really lackluster, so are the maps. This is a game where 90% of fighting is done by infantry, so outside of the occasional water and the very rare mud puddles, there's little they can do to make maps feel unique. Sieges and choke points are harder battles, but not exactly more challenging, considering that you'll be fighting the same low tier army over and over. While the AI does recruit giants and harpies, the former are underwhelming and the latter are easily neutralized by focus fire or by being chased. If I had to sum up the experience, too easy, too frustrating, and often wasting your time. The AI is bare bones, the balance is bad, and auto-resolves hates you. There's also the very annoying nega traits. Has your enemy sieged you during their turn with a small suicidal army? Nega trait. 3 steps from 3 different one-turn sieges. Has your spy spent one entire turn in enemy territory? Nega trait. Do you not like Aphrodite enough? Divorce. Technically, well, I'm not gonna comment on graphics, but it did run better than Warhammer. I'm not really a fan of the UI though, it doesn't tell you how big an army is when zoomed out, and the portraits are too intrusive in my opinion, especially in battle. So, Total War Troy. This is the weirdest Total War to date. Nobody had any confidence in it, not even Sega. It has a billion faults, both new and old. It's missing naval battles, which other than being historically accurate would have been a good way of stopping Trojan naval invasions, and the truth behind the myth approach doesn't please anyone and doesn't even go the whole way. It does have a great style and some personality, but this doesn't really make up for its shortcomings. However, for a free game it isn't enough. Personally, I don't think I will be playing it much more. It isn't really an improvement on the Total War formula in any regard, and it offers very little that's unique. But if it receives the same love Warhammer did, then I can see it becoming actually good. But that's just speculation, however. Right now it's barely worth the time spent playing it. There's better historical Total Wars, fantasy Total Wars and romanticized history Total Wars. If you didn't get it for free, don't bother, but if you did, maybe check it out in a couple of months. That's all, thanks for watching. See ya!
Let's eviscerate! Your warriors are losing heart! Cyclops, you will suffer!
Rape! 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 Rape!